I had a near-death-like experience in March of 2019, actually on March 23rd, which is the beginning of the season of Aries, which is the symbol of rebirth, and it's right there with the spring equinox. And that's really what it felt like. I didn't know that my experience was a near-death experience or a spiritual awakening because I was a radical militant atheist. I had never heard these words before. This wasn't any part of my picture. When I had my experience, I was a homeless meth head prostitute strung out on heroin. I was not a person who was rooted in any kind of spirituality. So I just thought that I died. And I mean, so I thought that I died. And the first part of my experience was like a life review. And it was really dark because, like, my life before being involved in that lifestyle of being so immersed in drug addiction, I caused a lot of harm to other people, like maliciously, intentionally harmed other people all throughout my life. And so in my life review, I started to experience that. I experienced the emotional, physical anguish that I was putting people through. And it was really dark. And so I just thought, okay, I died and I'm in hell because that's what it felt like. It just felt like pain, like endless amounts of pain. And in my life review, I experienced things from other people's point of view. One of the things that really stands out is I experienced my parents' death. My parents had committed suicide in 2007 together because of their own drug addiction. And I started to experience their suicide like literally inside of their consciousness. Like I saw them going to the pharmacy to pick up their prescriptions of pills and then going back to the house and getting into bed and writing the notes and fistful after fistful of pills and like the process of dying. And then I experienced it from my point of view again as a grieving daughter. And I mean, the pain of suicide, the pain of that like mental angst. I mean, it was so overwhelming. It felt like my skin was being ripped off my body, like every cell in my body was made of static and spikes, and it just started to feel like concrete was encasing me, and I was literally drowning in this ocean of despair. It was so overwhelming. And so then I was really convinced that I was dead because I was seeing my parents and I knew that they were dead. And so I said, okay, I'm dead and this is death. And man, it sucks. It is not cool. And which was different from what my idea of death was, which I just thought that you die, lights out, the end. I didn't think that anything else happens. So then I started to hear my dad's voice, and he was saying, "You're worthy of all the love in the universe. You're worthy of all the love in the universe." And he just kept chanting it like a mantra over and over and over again. And so I started to follow his voice. And as I did, I rose out of this ocean that I was drowning in, and I started to rise up into the light. And that's where the light part of my experience really took place. And it felt like I was downloaded with every experience that's ever happened on earth, like in the book or the movie The Giver, how they give the giver like all the memories of earth. That's what it felt like. I was being given everything that's ever happened to every person on earth, good, bad, and different, all the things. And then it kind of felt like I landed on the deck of a spaceship. I still haven't found great words for it, but it felt like I came out of the side of one of the walls. I don't know if that means like I was entering a parallel sort of perception. And in the center of this ship, there was this bright white tube of light. And that was our commander. And there was thousands of souls around me. And we were being told that we're spiritual soldiers. We're volunteers. We're on our way to Earth for the most exciting time to be on Earth because we're in the midst of transformation, the transformation of consciousness. And so all these souls are all around me, and everybody is hyped. They're like, yes, like fists up in the air. Everybody is so excited for this mission. The commander has this presence of safety and security and unconditional love. I mean, just beyond anything that human words can articulate. And then my awareness shifts over to another scene, and I find myself in front of a table of beings. And they didn't tell me who they were, but they didn't have to because I just innately knew that they were people in charge. I don't know if they were in charge of everything that is or just in charge of me and my life, but they were definitely people that I knew. They were in charge and they had this big, giant book. And it was a really ornate looking book, but they were sitting behind this really crappy, like plastic banquet hall table. Like it was nothing to write home about, like a collapsible, foldable table. But they had this beautiful, ornate book, and they were just thumbing through it and looking at me and saying, okay, it's good to see you. You're not meant to stay. You're only here for information. So that's what's going to happen. And I was like looking all around me. You guys aren't talking to me, are you? Because I am not leaving. I don't know where I am or what the H is going on, but I am definitely staying here. And they said, and they just kept thumbing through the book. No, 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 just information this time. Just information this time. And then I found myself transported to another scene, and everything looked like a video game in my experience, really. Like it was shifting from scene to scene, not really with any like seamlessness, just kind of like clunky, like scene to scene to scene. And this guy was standing there, and he was wearing this plaid blazer and a fedora, and he had this big empty grocery cart, and he said, okay, let's pick your life. And a grocery store manifested in front of me, and like I grabbed the cart, and lining the walls of the grocery store aisles were these big giant cereal boxes, and every cereal box had a life experience on it. And I knew, my soul knew, that I was coming to earth for this great awakening. And so I start grabbing every box, everything, the densest experiences and the most lifted experiences, and everything is going in the cart because I'm coming to earth to experience duality and for the ascension of consciousness. So I'm grabbing addiction, prostitution, homelessness, degradation, dereliction. What else can we throw in there? Sexual trauma. Oh, is there a variety pack? I'll take the big one. And the one moment of this, this download of the pre-birth plan that I like to share about is that I picked a cereal box that said childhood sexual trauma. Why would a soul pick that? I don't have a great answer, but I just have this, and I have this knowing that I did do that. And as I picked the cereal box, this little orb of light came out with the box, and it was the soul of the man who molested me when I was a kid. And we came orb to orb with each other. We came into contract, and you could feel how much we loved each other. I mean, like true, blissful, unconditional love. And then I was downloaded with the reasons why we were signing up to play these characters in each other's lives. And I saw that in a previous life, I had been his abuser in the same capacity. And so in this lifetime, we were balancing that particular energy. And also that because I was coming to earth for the Great Awakening, and because of the family that I was being born into, I wasn't just healing for myself. I was healing generational trauma. I was healing collective trauma. So, it made my mission seem that much more important, because I'm not just healing for little girl me. I'm healing for every little girl and little boy who didn't get an opportunity to heal from their childhood sexual trauma. And so I felt so lifted with this information. Literally, like 2 tons of bondage had been released from my spirit. I was like pinging and ponging all over the eternity, like so lifted, so excited to know that I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim to my circumstance. I'm not a victim to the world around me. I'm actually a divine co-creator of my experience. I'm in co-creation with God. I'm in co-creation with all that is. And so I go back in front of the table of beings, and I'm like on my metaphorical knees, because there's no physical body, but I'm like on my knees in gratitude, crying out, oh my God, this is so amazing. Thank you so much for giving me this information. Everything on earth makes so much more sense now. I'm still not going to go back because, like, you don't really need me there. Like, it's kind of a lot. It sort of feels like a dumpster fire down there, and I'm just not interested in returning. But I'm really grateful for this information. Thank you so much. I'm going to watch this Great Awakening show up here. I'll watch it on whatever streaming service you guys have, like Earth TV or something. And I'm just going to chill. And they just were very insistent. No, you are returning. And I said, you guys don't actually tell us what Earth is like. And I feel like I've been tricked, and I'm not going back. And they said, you say the same thing every time you come back here. You always say this exact thing. You know what you're signing up for. You really do. And you've been training for lifetimes for this. We're not going to let you miss your opportunity. This is a mission that you volunteered for, and you're going to complete it. And again, like transforming into a small child. No, you can't make me go back. I will not go back. And then I could perceive my body outside myself. And I said, look at her. And I was passed out on my bathroom floor, naked, overdosed, just like not a cute sight. Said, she is broken. She is in need of more healing than anyone can give her. There's no way for me to do anything inside of that body. And they said, okay, well, then you don't have to go back into her. We'll show you the baby that you'll be born into because you're going back. And then again, another scene, clunky scene, video game character, like a little 3D avatar rotating slowly in front of me. All her stats, boom, they appear right next to her. Her charisma level, her personality type, her gender, her ethnicity, the family she's going to be born into, her adversity, her purpose, parts of her mission. And then all of a sudden, my grocery cart goes into the frame. And so she's taking my whole life experience cart with her. And she's got extra cereal boxes thrown in because of the family that she's going to be born into. And I was like, no way. I cannot do it from zero. That is crazy. I was like, if these are really my only options, then I guess I'm going back into the body that I just came from. And they said, listen. And so I said, my awareness started to sift back into my body the second that I said that. It was like, that was my agreement. Like I said, okay, fine. Like I picked my choose my own adventure was go back into that body I just came from. And they said, the first part of your life was boot camp. It's gross. Nobody likes it, right? There's like a drill instructor. He's screaming in your face. You're doing 1,000 push-ups. It's raining. It's muddy. You're homesick. But the second part of your life is going to be carrying out your mission. You're going to have mentors and kindred spirits and soulmates and teachers and communities, and you're going to be living in spiritual awareness, and it's going to be so, so different. Just trust us. And I was like, I do not trust you guys. You have given me 0 reasons to trust you. And then I found myself back in my bathroom on the floor, and I just thought that it was drug-induced psychosis, right? All I knew was that I took a bunch of drugs, and then I thought I was talking to God. So I was like, okay, that was weird. And I just went on living my life the way that I was living it. I'll pause.
Yeah, that's fine. So it's a very kind of involved, but I suppose it follows the same template as a lot of NDEs do. You came out of your body, you had a life review, you had, the desire to stay and not come back. The only kind of main difference, I suppose, between yours and the regular NDE is a lot of them, although they exist, a lot of them don't seem to have that hellish aspect to it at the beginning, which is interesting because I think from your trigger of drug-induced, death, I suppose, then it brings up the question as to whether there was some influence there on the perception of a hell, because it seems that there is some sort of correlation from what I can remember, and I think I'm right, between kind of drugs, psychedelic-induced near-death experiences and a hellish environment. So that's quite an interesting correlation there.
Yeah, I think that is really interesting. I think that maybe it could also be that the fact that people who are immersed in drug addiction to the point of overdose probably aren't living very spiritually led lives. So just the awareness, of the life review, your thoughts are going to go where your life was. And so for me, I'm wrapped in drug addiction at the time. I'm living in like all the lower vibrations of earth: grief, loss, lack, apathy, anger, resentment, shame, all of those things. So that was what I started to experience in the life review. And I would imagine other people who have drug overdose experiences probably were living lives, maybe not to the extent of mine, but definitely not a life that's worth living.
And certainly a common reporting in near-death experiences and those that can go out of body willfully into these, quote, ethereal realms or astral realms, always seem to say, or most often than not say, that these environments are very strongly influenced by our expectations, our mindset. So being in a state of depression, and I've been there to the suicidal level before as well, nothing is positive. There is no positive in the world. And so bringing that kind of mindset with you, especially with the drug induced will probably, the drug induction will probably heighten that perception as well, and strengthen that image. So that could be certainly where you ended up, or at least the interpretation of where you ended up. It's interesting, though, that although the the aspects are similar to very many NDEs. You have the life review, as I say. The presentation is always very different of how one experiences it. The camping table with the big tome, all of the budget went on the book rather than the presentation. That's I've never heard before. Many times I hear of, cloaked figures with a panoramic kind of holographic representation of life. I've never heard kind of on a ship or a spaceship of kinds with soldiers, etc. I've never heard of that before. So it makes one wonder why we experience these things that could be argued as a potential reason as to why this maybe is some sort of drug-induced hallucination, because it seems very similar to a dream where these random things come up, that we would never have thought of in waking life, and yet manifest in dreams, like a ship, like a big book on the camping table, seemingly random presentations. One could be easily swayed to believe that these are some kind of dream/hallucination, especially with the drugs involved. So what would you say to that kind of idea?
Yeah, I think that there's probably some validity to that too. And the thought that comes up for me when I think about why do so many of us have different experiences is because each of us that come back from our experiences are meant to be teachers in some way. It might just be teaching your family by sharing your experience just to them. Or it might be something like going out into the world, writing books, going on podcasts, kind of really getting out there with the story, which now that we have the internet, tons of people do that. And the information is for who it resonates with. So for somebody like me, if my mission is to come back and tell people, hey, you know what, you don't have to let drugs kill you. You can just stop using drugs. Let me try to help you or teach you how to do that. Then they're probably going to need a more colorfully crafted story. And I think that's why my story came to me the way that it did. I also think that it was highly influenced by aspects of my life. I grew up in a certain generation. And so everything looked to me like a video game because I grew up playing video games. And so they couldn't download me with ancient philosophies or different religions to help me understand what it was that I was experiencing. So they came at me in a really sort of little kid way. And that really helped me digest the information once I was ready to really receive what had happened to me.
And you said that initially you did consider this to be some kind of trip, I suppose, as a result of the drugs in your system. So what kind of switched for you to show you that was a genuine experience in reality?
Yes, for months I thought that it was just a drug-induced hallucination. I did not, because I didn't believe in this stuff. So why would I think that this would be happening to me? And I found myself, all of these divine synchronicities started to happen in my life. I was a drug addict. And so all of a sudden, all of my dealers decided to stop selling on the same day. I'm talking about 10 different men. I'd call up one guy, I'd be like, hey man, what's good? I want to pick up. He'd be like, listen, lose my number. I found Jesus. I want to be a good dad. I'm out of the game. I'm like, okay, bye, weird. And then I'd call up the next guy on this long list of people that I knew, and he had the exact same story, but these men did not know each other. And it was all of these doors were just closing in my face. No, you can't live your life this way anymore. But again, I was just I was desperate. So I was just going out. I was getting things from strangers on the street. It was always fake, or I would get robbed, or whatever would happen. Again, more doors closing, more doors closing. So now I find myself in withdrawal because I was a heroin addict on top of a million other drugs.
Yeah, being on the drugs is hard, but coming off of them, I'd imagine, is a hell in itself.
Absolutely. And that's why so many people stay on substances for so long.
It's similar, just to kind of get onto that, because it's similar for me as well with prescription drugs. I'm on sertraline, which is an SSRI antidepressant. And if I come off of that for 2 days, it's not like you want it because you start to feel worse. Your body is shutting down and it feels like you're deathly ill. So especially if you have
withdrawal from SSRIs can be much more impactful than even something from an opiate or a benzo. It's very dangerous, and that's not something that doctors are informing people of when they're prescribing all of these SSRIs to people.
So I can imagine what withdrawal from your kind of addictive substances were like.
Yeah, it was definitely agonizing pain. And like the problem with it is that there's actually nothing physically wrong with you. Right. So it feels like my bones are all broken, my skin is made of broken glass, my blood is lava. But when you look at me, there's nothing physically wrong with me. So why does it feel that way? It's because everything in my head is all mixed up,
Yeah,
all
all
the
the
wires are
hormones have
crossed,
been
and it's making
confused. Yeah.
yes, all my pain receptors are all crisscrossed and nothing is working. And so I was in the midst of withdrawal. I was on day 3 of withdrawal, which is like the worst day because you're just like right at the tip of the mountain. And withdrawal symptoms usually last like 7 to 10 days. But like the first 7 days are really, really bad. The first
Absolutely.
5 days, especially,
Mm.
are really bad. And I was just in this state of utter desperation. And I knew in that moment what my parents had been going through. I understood completely why they committed suicide. I absolutely understand. I understood it 1,000%. And I had been in this place before. I had gone through withdrawal dozens of times in my life. But this particular time, I was 35 years old. Like I'm no spring chicken. This was the first time that I was going through withdrawal at this age. And it was it was like my body just could not handle
And
it.
especially
And I kind of cried out.
after such a long period on them as well.
Totally. 20 years of using substance, 20 years of being on some kind of opiate, whether first it was prescription pills and then one day, those weren't available, so it became heroin. But it was agonizing and I had this thought that I was going to kill myself. But then I was like, I can't even get up out of bed to do that. I can't even like I can't grab a knife. I can't go to the store and buy Tylenol. Like I can't do anything. And then I heard this voice and it told me that I could request what I wanted fixed. And I was like in the throes of desperation. So I was like, okay, strange voice, please fix me. And I was really over intellectual about it. I said, fix my pain receptors and my neurotransmitters
You want
because
to
I
be
had
as
been to
specific
detox and
as
rehab.
possible so that they know
I was
exactly
so
what.
specific.
Yeah,
I really was.
I've done that.
And the only reason why I knew what those things were is because I had been to rehab a dozen times. And every time that you go there, they give you psychoeducation about addiction. And so I said, please fix this. It's so painful. And they told me to close my eyes and count backwards from 10. And as I did, these two little men appeared in my mind's eye. And they were these little white men. They were bald. They had bulbous noses, and they were wearing white lab coats. And they had these little lawnmowers that manifested in front of them. And they took off in separate directions. And they started mapping out every crevice of my mind. And as they did, I felt these intense hot tingles start to take over the whole crown of my head. Then it felt like somebody drew X's across my forehead. And then a plunger was placed on the crown of my head and it plunged down and it came back up. And as it did, I was instantaneously healed out of day 3 of heroin withdrawal. I mean, like moments before, I was sick all over myself, welcoming death. And then there I was, completely well and healed and fine. And I threw myself on the ground and I was crying out to a God that I did not believe in. And I said, how could this be happening to me? I don't believe in this. I don't believe in you. You could not have picked a more unworthy kind of subject to bestow this grace on. And then I started to hear these voices, and they said, but you're worthy of all the love in the universe. You're worthy of all the love in the universe. And they just kept chanting it over and over and over again. And I'm at a crossroads because in my mind, I know who I am. They're telling me that I'm worthy of universal love, but I know that I'm a piece of shit. Like I was a militant atheist, an orphan to suicide, a prostitute, a drug addict, a liar, a manipulator, a thief. I had caused so much harm to other people. How could I be worthy of any kind of love? And they were telling me that it didn't matter, that I really was worthy of love. And so then, that wasn't enough for me. Spontaneous healing, trip to heaven. Nah, I still don't believe what's going on. Like, I've
Coincidence.
obviously
Yeah.
just lost my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
And I really thought that I was just dead. I was like, oh man, I'm stuck in purgatory. This sucks. Like, I don't know what to do. So I went out on the New York City subway system to proselytize and evangelize. And I was telling people that I was the second coming of Christ because that's what I thought that I was. I thought like, oh my God, I've been healed and like I'm Jesus and this is amazing. And anyway, I was crazy. I was like laying hands on homeless drug addicts, trying to heal them out of their own drug addiction. It was wild. But one day I was on the train and the whole train car was completely empty, which is bizarre in New York City. Maybe I scared everybody out of the train car. I don't know. So the whole train car is empty. The doors open and a man steps inside, and he sits directly across from me, even though the whole train car was empty. And around his neck was this big blinged out emblem for a 12-step fellowship. And I heard this voice in my head, and it said, "That's your path. Follow him to a meeting." And so I asked this stranger on the train if he happened to be going to a meeting. And guess what? He was on his way to one, and he took me with him. And that was the day that my surrender started. And then the next day I went to another meeting, and I didn't look the way that I look now when I came into this process. Like when this whole awakening was happening, I looked crazy. Like I was missing most of my teeth. I'm grateful to have been able to buy teeth in my life. My skin was gray, my eyes were dead. I was all sunken in, and used to have these huge holes all over my face and my arms because every time that I got high, I thought that bugs lived inside of
Uh-huh.
me. And so I would pick myself and cut myself open trying to get the bugs out of me. So I looked crazy, like just absolutely destroyed. And so I walked into this women's meeting, and they could tell that I was new because it was painfully obvious that I was new. And this woman, she grabbed me to hug me as I walked through the door. And I hadn't been touched in a loving way in a really long time. So I kind of got like grossed out. I felt like I was recoiling inside my skin. And then she leaned in and she whispered in my ear and she said, "You are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe." And I melted. I mean, I had like this deep guttural cry. And I rested my head on her big boobies for as long as she would let me. And I just cried into this woman and I fully surrendered. This was no longer some sort of hallucination inside my head. These weren't voices that were invisible. This was a tangible person in front of me whispering into my ear. And she was holding me. So I could no longer play it off as something that wasn't real. This was an actual person with me saying the same message that I've heard repeated all throughout this awakening process. And that was it, like that was when I really knew that this was a real experience and not a hallucination.
But certainly, even getting to that point with the life that you'd lived, the fact that you didn't kill yourself as many would, the fact that, you've got to where you are now, you should be incredibly proud of yourself because that's a very difficult thing to do. And I've not been to that level, but I've been to the suicidal level where, with my anxiety that manifests very physically, I was feeling like I was having food poisoning or some sort of virus every day of my life. And I got to that stage where I was in suicidal thoughts thinking, I don't want to live the rest of my life like this, and I was close, and it was only the fear of death that stopped me. But, times that by 1,000 on, drug addiction with losing your parents through suicide, you should be very, very proud of the fact that you're still here at all. And, to make that kind of transformation, it shows you what is possible as not necessarily even without the spiritual guidance, but being human, it is changeable,
Thanks for sharing that. I think that the thing that happens with suicide, because I've tried to kill myself a handful of times, 2 times very seriously, where I was, on life support for a week trying to be brought back to life. But I think of those things as, like it's not that I actually want to die and leave Earth. It's just I would rather die than experience what I'm experiencing right now. And like, are there other options? Sometimes when you're in the eye of the storm, you can't see that there's other options. Like when it comes to my parents, they didn't even know that you could just stop using drugs. They honestly did not even know that. They just thought that you had to die if you actually wanted to stop, because that's what everybody else in our family
And
did. They would
and
die to
it's
stop.
understandable, when you haven't been there, it's easy to say, well, so many people love you, you don't need to kill yourself, it's the wrong way to do it, just, but once you've been there, you realise that there is no other option, people don't realise you're in that kind of a level of not sadness, but, hopelessness, where there is no future.
Totally.
And I completely sympathise with those who are suicidal and want to take their own life, because it's absolutely an understandable way to think. Because you don't realise and you can't realise that what you experience is temporary and that it changes and it will get better. But while you're going through it, you don't see that. And, respect to those that do end up taking their own lives, because their lives have been hell. And I completely understand why they'd want to get out of it. It's a shame, but I can completely empathise with it. It was just too much.
I was in a I was in a suicide support group once, and the woman who was leading the group, she said, "Have you ever closed your finger in a car door?" And everybody was like, having this sensory memory, like, "Oh, it happened to me once. It was terrible." And she said, that's what it's like moments before suicide. It's like having your thumb closed in a car door. And what are you thinking about? You're not thinking, I have kids, I have a job, I have a family, people love me. You're just thinking, holy shit, this hurts. I need to make this stop. And you would do anything to make that pain stop. And that's really, my idea about, because I communicate with my dad, and he committed suicide. It's been 17 years ago now, and he's my number one spirit guide. He's always with me, but he communicates to me through an alternate timeline. So I don't think that people that commit suicide just like go to heaven and chill out, and they're like, they exited. Again, the same message from my experience. You signed up for something, you have to complete it. You have to complete all the boxes in your life, in your life cart. You can't just, there's still more cereal to be had. You have to have all your cereal. You wanted all these things, you have to experience all these things. So I do think of it as like a checkpoint in a game. Like the times when I tried to commit suicide, maybe I did actually die. Maybe I fractured off into another timeline. When you get into the idea of infinity, who knows? I mean, like anything is possible. So I woke up in a hospital bed. That's the reset. That's the checkpoint in the game. It's like you blink out, you go into a hospital bed, and you start the level over. Okay, what are you going to do different this time? Are you going to get strung out on drugs again? Are you going to fall into a pit of depression again? Or are you going to do something different? And for me, my character just kept doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And that's the definition of insanity. Like I was just living my life in an insane way, expecting things to change without actually changing anything. And I do think that, if you do exit on your own terms, that you probably have to do life again and complete your life experience cart, not as a punishment, but just to experience as much as you can, because, heaven is boring. There's like nothing to do there. You're just like chilling in unconditional love and light all day. Snooze. Earth is where it's at. Like we have duality, we have all these different things going on. Sometimes it can feel really overwhelming. And it's just about like getting to that point where you can accept everything, accept the good, the bad, and the indifferent, and allow all of those things to come your way and just pass through you.
One thing before we finish, 'cause I know you're limited, one thing that I did pick up on that I thought was interesting was when you were told you had to go back, you mentioned that, you didn't tell me about Earth, and that they said, well, you've said this every time you come back. It's interesting because most people, at least in their recollections, end up with a complete kind of knowledge of their past lives and their processes of between lives. So it's interesting that you kind of seem to retain that amnesic aspect of your individual life, I suppose. Why do you think that could be?
I don't know. I've never actually thought about that. So thank you for bringing that up. I think that there was so much of my human personality entwined in my experience. Again, like I didn't completely detach from who I was, because like my experience was kind of funny and I was like making jokes with them, and like I have a funny personality here, but do I think that my soul has a funny personality? No, I think that that's like a very human attribute. And it's interesting because the way that souls presented themselves to me throughout my experience shifted as I went further into the experience. So when I first went into the light and I saw all of these, like my platoon that I'm a part of, the army that I'm in, they were light bodies. They were like in a human shape, but no gender, no features, but just these light human shaped bodies. And then as I went further into the experience, when I saw the souls that I was coming into contact with, they were just orbs of light. So maybe if I would have went further into my experience, maybe I would have started to remember more things. I bet the longer that you're there, the more that it all makes sense. But because so much of my human personality was coming with me, I was really resistant to the whole thing. I mean, I definitely wanted to stay, but I was very resistant to what was happening too. I think that level of resistance might have caused a rift.
And that connection was still very close. So you didn't have that kind of that universal freedom, I suppose, that others do.